And we're back again from the blue corner. My name is Dennis, and this week is a special week for a few reasons. Obviously, I've taken another trip around the sun, and I have officially hit the 40s, the midlife crisis. We also had Khabib retire this week at 29-0. We might talk about that. I don't know. And yes, Sydney summers are starting to feel like winter, but that is what it is. Today I have got a very special guest, special in many senses. I was just speaking to him before the podcast, and he gave me a good glimpse into, doing some research before you ask questions. I first met him up for the Tough Smashers series up in Queensland, where I had approached him for an interview. And one of my first, I guess, I don't know if it was the first question, but probably second or third question was how he was enjoying Australia, only to be told he's been living in Australia for a little while. And it really taught me a valuable lesson to do a little bit of research before you jump on the mic. But as a professional fighter, he's had 71, 72, closer to 80 professional fights. He's fought for multiple organizations. When it comes to manscaping, I can honestly say he is the greatest of all time. And he's also now our national head coach for the IMMAF team. Actually, I was going to say he's about to start his first Wimp to Warrior series, but it officially started this week. I'm talking about Brian Ebersole. He joins me via video call. How have you been, and how has 2020 been shaping up for you?
It's been quite a strange year. Obviously, like, the gyms got shut down. IMMAF has been really just hamstrung the whole year with the international aspect. So even if certain countries get back online, you can't really just cross-pollinate nation to nation. The UFC's got a pretty unique thing going on where they're testing people coming in and going out, and they're super isolated in that bubble. The Wimp to Warrior series that I was coaching at Customized Fitness Solutions in G.O.A.T alongside John Levin, that got interrupted. So there's a lot of people that really found it hard to come back and finish the season. And then obviously there's a finale at the end that can't take place because we can't put a crowd in New South Wales into an event. The CSA here, Combat Sports Authority, has just sent out an email last Tuesday saying that they'll accept applications for events, though the crowd restrictions are going to make it very, very difficult to host an indoor event and not lose money. So it's one thing just to throw fights in a rubber room, and I think a lot of us would still show up. A lot of us coaches and athletes would still show up to compete. But when you really have cage setup, production costs, venue hire, tables, chairs, blah, 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 like, you got to put some bums in seats to pay for all that. And if there's not enough bums in the seats, then it's hard to really pull the cab off the rank and take that drive. So New South Wales has been a bit shy there. Queensland, thankfully, where I matchmake XFC, has been able to pull off a show outdoor in August, and we're going to throw an indoor show in December. So there's at least a little bit of excitement there. And the Queensland government announced that they're going to likely allow border passes. So as long as you apply and tell them you're going from New South Wales over to Queensland, there's no quarantine. It's kind of like the QR codes inside the restaurant tables and cafes. Basically, that's what we're doing, saying we're getting on a flight, we're going there. How long are you going to be there? When are you coming back? So, XFC's December 12th, and I'll actually be able to put a few of my fighters on this time and go myself. So it's starting to come back to normal, but yeah, it's been a very, very hamstrung year in many regards.
I think December 12th you'll be fine. Look, the general conversation at the moment is that the Queensland state elections is this weekend, and everyone's kind of saying that once the state election passes and whoever gets elected, they'll start reopening the borders. At the moment, a lot of the discussion is it is a political kind of stance. So a lot can change, as I say, especially by the 12th. I mean, we've got all of November, so by the 12th of December, I think we'll be fine. We'll be crossing those borders.
Yeah, their website on the government website had like October 1st, November 1st, and December 1st differences in what they plan on doing. Kind of stages, and even by the November 1st cutoff, it should allow travel over with no quarantine. So I'm pretty sure we're safe as far as getting over there, unless there's a catastrophic, outbreak.
But I think, yeah, with the CSA now, I think they are actually allowing crowds. I mean, as you said, it will be limited to the amount of crowds, social distancing. Because I think the email that got sent around said, they'll approve applications, but you have to have a COVID safe plan, and I assume that's to do
Yeah,
with, spacing and everything like that. But I mean, look, I
and
do it.
that's per venue. So I mean, some of these events have like good tie-ins with certain venues, and it's not always accessible for an MMA show to go into a like a concert hall, like a bigger venue, for the first time especially. And they've just sent that email last week. So let's say an application gets approved tomorrow. I'm 7 weeks away from a December 7 show, and I've done a lot of work as a matchmaker beforehand, and the promoters have done a lot of work in the last few weeks as well. So to start something tomorrow and try to get it done before Christmas is going to be really tight. So it basically opens things up for next year. And the common industry standard is most shows don't do anything in January. Most shows don't do anything before Valentine's Day. So March or late February becomes that first weekend that everyone fights over.
But I will say, I mean, as specific, not with the pro fighting, but with the Wimp to Warrior. Like, I wonder if, I mean, I guess it's finding a gym that's big enough, but I wonder if the option would be to find a gym, um, to, yeah, like not have any crowds, obviously not have the venue costs, not have the seat costs, and do it at, say, if your gym's big enough to set up a cage inside the gym, and then do it as a streaming kind of pay-per-view model as well. If that
Yeah.
is an option, I mean, I know Mick from the Sydney series was trying to do it, but his problem was that the CSA just wouldn't commission it, regardless of streaming,
Yeah.
non-streaming, crowds, no crowds. They were like, no. And then 2 weeks later, they sent out an email going, "We're accepting applications." So it was kind of like,
That's it.
it's all up in the air. But look, we'll get to the Winter Warrior a little further along. I want to start with you, like, because obviously you've had a vast, number of years of experience when it comes to the martial arts. I think when did you originally start? It was early 2000s, or even 2000, wasn't it? Or
Yeah. So my first fight was June 10, 2000. So
okay.
yeah, 20 years ago.
And so what originally got you into, I guess, I know you're showing your age now, but what
And
originally
yours.
what originally got you into mixed martial arts? Because I mean, look, now martial arts is kind of like, some claim mainstream, some are still saying it's not quite there yet. I mean, we're definitely there, but
Yeah.
in the early 2000s, it. I mean, the money wasn't really there. The kind of like it had a stigma around it and stuff like that. So, what originally got you, I guess, into the world of mixed martial arts?
Well, I really lucked into it. So I'd wrestled my whole life, and I remember there was a summer where I was riding across town to play with mates, football or baseball or whatever it was, right? And I ended up coming across a group of guys playing basketball, and they were competitive. Not all of us were good, you know what I mean? Like we all had like at least a strong point. The guy that couldn't shoot the ball could at least play defense or rebound, or Dennis Rodman or something, right? And the guy that couldn't get a rebound could at least hit a set shot if no one was in his face, kind of thing. But maybe he couldn't dribble to save his life. So it was always like fun, like picking teams and doing all that. But I ended up grouping in with these guys, and because they were competitive, I really made an effort to get out to their neighborhood all the time and try to play over the summer. And come to find out, a couple of them trained martial arts. So there was like Taekwondo. One guy did Kempo, and it was a bit more like old school, like Merake boards, and just a bit tougher. He had hard shins. Another guy was actually kind of a point fighting competitor, and like traveled and did a bit of it. Had some big trophies in the garage and things like that. So the UFC had come out, and a couple of the other guys like started drifting in, wanting to do the grappling and be playful. Like obviously we're not going to go hit each other. You know, we're 15 to 18 years old at the time. So it became like a grappling thing that we started. You know, we play basketball, we grapple. We play basketball, we grapple. And because I wrestled, it was actually the point fighting guy that showed like the first sign of like, oh, I'm frustrated. Like, you know, can't win a match. Like, you'd never take me down before I could hit you. So the age-old argument of like, you can't take me down, even though you've trained your entire life to take people down that know the only thing you're trying to do is take them down, and they defend themselves from only the takedown, and they stand a certain way and they move a certain way, and they put in a lot of hours. But yes, of course, your upright kickboxing stance is going to be something new to me. Okay, so we did that whole experiment, and I took him down a fair few times, and we got that over with. And then it turned into more like back to the collaborative. Like, all right, well, how about I try to box you playfully and you try to wrestle me? And I knew like if I went for Ham and he's never wrestled, it's going to be really awkward because even though I'm not good, I'll hit him eventually. So it was very playful for me. And then he'd try to wrestle, and I tried to stay playful because if I wanted to put my hips down, I probably could have. You know, I was an 18-year-old kid, that 17-year-old kid never wrestled. So it became like a playful, like back and forth, and we'd be watching fights, trying to break things down. And, you know, we didn't have like a John Danaher around, you know what I mean? So we're just trying arm bars and throwing up triangles and doing our thing. And eventually, when I went off to college, Matt Hughes was my wrestling coach. He was an assistant coach at Eastern Illinois University. And there ended up being something about that room. I don't know what it was, but we were not like Iowa or Oklahoma State, you know, like where Cormier came from or where Dan Gable coached. We were just a ragtag, like ruffian group of kids that wrestled Division One, but like we were on the lower end of Division One, like a smaller school compared to like the bigger, like where Penn State and Cale Sanderson are now. Um, so we never had like the favorite in the nation. We didn't have like a bunch of All-Americans. We had scrappy guys that, you know, if given an opportunity, could capitalize and win a match against someone they weren't supposed to beat. Um, we had a lot of fighters come out of that room. You know, I have a heavyweight teammate that was a senior when I was a freshman. So he was grade 12, I was 9. He went off to college, and I got to wrestle 2 years with him there because, you know, you get 5 years of college if you take one off. You call it a red shirt, and you athletically sit back for a year. So he got to the UFC before I did, funny enough, and did really well. I've got a teammate that was the PFL champion, won the $1 million tournament at middleweight. 4 or 5 other guys ended up being UFC fighters out of that room. So and plenty of Bellator and the like. And the team got cut about 3 years after I was out of college anyway. So it would have been really neat to see, without any cohesive effort, none of us trained MMA together. You know, we all went back home and did our thing and ended up separately getting into MMA. But it would have been really neat to see, like, after we set that very ad hoc, scattered legacy for that room, what would have ended up happening to that room when people go, hey, like, we don't have a bunch of All-American wrestlers, but these guys were pretty competitive and then went on to become UFC stars or Bellator stars or PFL champions. You know, how would that have changed, like, recruiting, and how would that have changed, like, off-season wrestling? Like, wrestling's 4 or 5 months a year. What are you going to do with the other 6 or 7? Would guys have started training jiu-jitsu and boxing at a local gym? You know, would a gym have just popped up in the little downtown, like the quaint little downtown area? You know, would one of the old wrestlers have opened his own gym nearby? You know, like it would have been really neat to kind of see if that program hadn't been shut down by the NCAA and, like, you know, Title IX and trying to be equality for men and women and money coming into sports. Had that not all kind of coalesced into the cutting of a lot of wrestling programs, it would have been really cool to watch. So I kind of lucked into it with friends back home. I had my inspiration. Obviously, Matt Hughes had a fight like my freshman year, and me and my roommate went and watched him. And I ended up having my first fight in that very same gym that I went and watched Matt. But it was always going to happen. Whether or not I wrestled at EIU, I really think I still would have had a fight because there was that burning question. Once that guy brought up the whole "you could never take me down before I hit you," what if it was like Mike Tyson? What if it was someone stockier, bigger, scarier? You know what I mean? That was saying that to me. Would I still feel confident? Would I still be eager to have a go? So there's always that lingering question of like, okay, it works, but like, how well does it work for me? Can I do it? Like,
And when
stuff
it
works, math works, but not everyone's good at it.
and when it when
Some
when
people
it
just stare at the board.
when it comes to the wrestling side of things, like it's the one thing that I always say about Australia, we kind of lack it a little bit. I mean, I know I spoke to Richie Walsh about it, and you know, he said obviously we've got the Wrestling Foundation, which is one place now that you can go, and you know, he kind of spoke about that, but it's the one thing that I think we lack here. You know, like we've got great jiu-jitsu gyms, we've got great striking gyms, you know, and you see that as well, like when you look at like like what our country produces, as in the Robert Whitakers, and even now City Kickboxing with Izzy and stuff like that. Like we've got really good overall exposure, except wrestling is always missing there a little bit, right? Like, and I mean in comparison to, I guess, America, because it's such a predominant, I guess, sport in the schooling system or in the college system, that it's brought in from a very, I guess, young age. You know, a lot of you guys know how to wrestle really, really well. But obviously, you've experienced it on both sides. What is your kind of opinion on the importance of wrestling when it comes to mixed martial arts, and two, where you feel, you know, we sit in Australia?
So very big question. I'll try to attack it from a few angles. Like the importance of wrestling and MMA is on the simplest level, like the ability to dictate, maybe not always choose because things happen, but to have a fair chance of dictating where the fight occurs. So if I tell myself I want to take someone down, like it's gonna happen. Now whether or not I take 10 punches and a knee to the ribs on the way in, and my persistence, you know, maybe Khabib persistence trying to get there, you know what I mean? Or even Ben Askren, like you'd see Ben miss a shot, but he'd be next to an ankle and he'd dive at the ankle. And sometimes when he got it, it was, oh my God, like that was crazy. And when he missed, it looked silly, like he's belly down. He just missed an ankle and he's got to stand back up and dust himself off and start again, but he gets right back after the guy. So that pressure, you know, we just saw Khabib do it to Gaethje. Like Gaethje was probably between rounds, even though he did some damage, but he was tired because it was a stressful, high-paced first round.
And I
So to
have
be
to
able to
say,
put that pace on someone and be
sorry,
used to it is
I
a
just want
gift.
to interject there. The one thing that amazed me with Khabib on that one was just the sheer pressure, right? Like, and I think that's where
Even
Gaethje,
after getting hit
but like Gaethje, he was constantly
forward.
backwards, and it was like I mean, look, we know Khabib has always been a monster when it comes to wrestling, but that pressure that he put on over the weekend
Yeah.
was insane. Like he just did not allow Gaethje to take one step forward. It was constantly, and as you say, even when he was taking a shot, he was moving forward, and it was incredible to see. And yeah, I totally agree. It was, you know, Gaethje after the first round, you could see he was sucking him in.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of them ones where like it doesn't matter that you're not always under like threat of like getting cracked or threat of getting taken down. The fact that like treat it like a chessboard or a checkers board, that you have to jump, not walk, not bounce and saunter, like you have to jump sharply to the next square to avoid being grabbed, which is obviously what you're trying to avoid. And your jump, like that footwork under stress is so hard. I get so many people that sort of laugh at me when I tell them like just being able to like walk properly in a boxing stance is going to be your biggest challenge for your first 6 months. You know, and you get boxing coaches that put towels around necks and make guys just move and not throw punches and concentrate on their feet for a reason. You know, they're building a real foundation. Um, but that stress of always having to be on and jumping and small movements and obviously the biggest muscles of your body are springing back and forth while he just kind of Jason Voorhees is it, you know, just walks. You know, it's stressful. It's even without the action, even if they didn't really, you know, grab wrists and, you know, get into collar ties and there weren't many strikes thrown, just being chased around like that. And Khabib's taking more straight line action chasing. Gaethje has to run that outside. So he's probably doing 3 times the distance. And he's doing it under, you know, pressure and again jumping. So to be able to do that to someone and put him under that pressure and push that pace, because wrestlers are used to it. There's so many wrestlers that have gotten away from wanting to play that game because they know how taxing it is, and they stop trusting. They think, oh, if I do get myself that tired, then he'll hit me later. But he's not going to have anything on it later. Like, if you're that tired, he must be that tired with you. You know, it's weird how some of the guys like Koscheck and Jake Ellenberger, for example, and even Tyrone Woodley, like it's like they kind of got away from that. And I understand Tyrone Woodley maybe not wanting to wrestle Usman or Colby Covington, and just saying, hey, let's make this a boxing thing, because a wrestler versus a wrestler, like if you are on that slight down end of that grapple, that 10% difference in energy can be all the difference in the world. You know, you give up a takedown in the second round and you've busted your butt in the first round, you might not get back up.
Plus, you got to play.
We've all been ridden.
You got to play to your strengths, right? So there, I see, say Covington Woodley. I'm like, okay, the wrestling is a chess match, but then you look like the striking power, the sheer power. Woodley's got to go. Well, I've probably got that knockout power, right? So you would play to that purely because you feel like you have the bigger advantage. But let me ask you this. When it comes to wrestling, and look, I don't like to throw the whole GOAT out there because, you know, whether John Jones, whether it's Izzy or whatever, but when it comes to the wrestling sense, do you feel that Khabib's the greatest to ever do it?
Yeah.
Yeah? And what sets him apart from the rest of them?
So George St. Pierre did a great job with timing, and he got a lot of clean takedowns, but he didn't force the wrestling game all the time. But the difference, I think, between the results that George saw, I mean, he got a lot of takedowns on a lot of wrestlers that were supposedly better than him. But he didn't have the ground control. And I wouldn't say it was a jiu-jitsu thing that Khabib beat him on or whatnot. Like, Khabib wasn't passing guard better than George St. Pierre. George St. Pierre had a really awesome system from Danaher, and he used it really well. And then when he changed off to his second system, you know, that was very solid as well. So his A and his B pathway to pass guard were both very good. But Khabib rarely got into guard. So he completed his takedowns and landed half guard side control. I think stats, if we watched and took score, would back that up a very high percentage of the time, especially compared to other athletes. So to be able to do that changes the whole game for you. Like, you're under constant threat of getting taken down, but once you hit the mat, you're not even in guard. You can't even use your hands to defend yourself. Half the time he's got you wrapped and pinned, or he's got you wrapped and pinned, or he's got both legs together. You know what I mean? Like, you know, all you're trying to do is push on his knees. And it was just a different awareness. I wouldn't even say he was physically better. I think he just built a better game.
And I think, I mean, DC always mentions it that he's good at chaining things together as well. So he's a good wrestler, but apparently, I'm assuming that just means transition. But like DC always talks about chain wrestling.
When you run into resistance as a wrestler, you have a couple choices, you know, and the two simplest ones are to try to run through that brick wall, and the other is to try to find your way over or around it, you know, to bypass it. And a lot of guys run through the brick wall too hard, and they end up getting their whole attempt shut down, because that becomes the first and only move they try. If you stop Khabib's double, he's going to change it to a single, and then maybe back to a double, and maybe to a body lock, and then. He doesn't stop wrestling even when he takes you down. He continues wrestling. Some people take someone down, and then they kind of lay for a minute and just expect like a jiu-jitsu position to happen for them without micro movement, where Khabib sort of never stopped. Like, he'd have his shoulder in your guts, and he'd have you pass through, and he'd have the legs, but you could always see his feet moving and walking and trying to stack your legs and trying to keep your feet off the ground so you couldn't hip escape or stand, looking for an arm to trap, trying to climb the body. You know, it was never just this, I've got the takedown, my job's done. You know, so it was just constant millimeter by millimeter movement to his end game all the time.
I'll tell you what I found crazy about that fight, though. The next day, the judges' scorecards came out, and two out of the three actually
round
gave
one.
it to Gaethje.
He did some damage. He landed some big leg kicks.
But he was on the back foot. He nearly had the armbar at the end of it. Like I was like, I really don't know what's going on there, right? Like it's But I have to say, look,
when you have to do that, when you have to go 10-9 and you have to cut it at 5 minutes. Like I was joking the other day with the demolition promoter over in Melbourne. So he was writing me having a bit of a laugh, and fighting came up and and I said the only way I'd ever fight again is if it was just a straight 10-minute fight. You know, I'm old. I don't want to do 15 or 25. You know, I go all these breaks and stand ups and all this stuff. And he's like, "Who would you fight?" And I'm like, "Well, Bob Sapp or someone similar." I'm not trying to be serious, you know. It's like, don't get it twisted. I go, I'm not chasing Rob Whittaker right now. Don't worry, or Kyle Noak. Like I don't want to get hit. But that whole like at 5 minutes, whatever happens, let's just erase that and start over. Like the purist in me is just it's so awkward, and I get it with wrestling. Like we put each other on our back, and you're almost pinning someone, and the buzzer goes off. But I think that adds to the thrill of wrestling in a sense. And I think it does it in a way that's not as dangerous. Where MMA, it's one of them ones where like people can get seriously hurt. So you've got Justin Gaethje mounted, almost armbarred, and then we're going to stand back up and hand Justin Gaethje a set of nunchucks and a katana and let him come back at you with weapons again. Like, wait, no, I've just disarmed him and tied him up. You know what I mean? Like, even if I sit on top of him for 20 minutes and wait for the police to show up and wait for the 25-minute buzzer, take my title and go home. But like, it's so strange to me. And then you have referees that'll stand people up from side control in half guard because they're not doing anything. Well, he's not doing anything. Like I've had my forearm buried 6 centimeters into someone's neck before and had a ref stand me up. I'm choking him right now. I know it doesn't look like a cool move, but he is not having fun.
I think it's to do with education, and it's the one thing that I say with people that go through the Wimp to Warrior series, right, is that before the Wimp to Warrior series, a lot of these people, you know, because it's their first sort of experience, you know, they may be the type of people that exactly the thing you were just talking about, that be in the crowd booing because they feel like there's a lack of action. After you go through a series like that and you at least learn the little bits of control, you know, and little adjustments that you make, cage control, this and that, I think the same goes with a lot of the refs. Like I find that some refs, if they've got like a good jiu-jitsu base and so forth, they allow that ground action to continue a lot more, where a lot of these other refs that have come across from boxing or whatever, they just see it as in there's two guys lying on the ground, then they hear the crowd boo a little, right? And then they're like, okay, let's stand them up. So I totally agree, but I think it's an education thing. How you change that, I have no idea, but you know, everyone's got their background, and I just feel like it's really predominant on what that ref's background is on how he's going to ref that fight.
Yeah, I'll even take that a step further with the bias. Like I've seen it where it's biased toward the athlete itself, not so much the ref's background, but like they'll give Damian Maia more time off of his back. So he'll shut someone down, which is the first step, right? Where if like a Tai Tuivasa shuts someone down and it's boring, they'll stand him up. When Maia shuts him down, they're like, oh, now the game's about to start. But it's been the same 45 seconds of action trying to tie up an arm, trying to break the guy's posture, trying to get the overhook, but then they'll let Damian Maia continue for the next 3 minutes, but they'll stand Tai Tuivasa up. Or Randy Couture against the cage. They'll leave Randy there for 5 minutes. I had Chris Tagliani, like, I just got my hands locked around John Howard, double underhooks, up into the back of his neck, up against the cage. I just, 20 seconds against the cage. Just got double underhooks, finally locked my hands. He broke us up.
And is that like how as a fighter, is that
he's a wrestling referee?
Is that soul crushing? Like when you get to that, like, You know, I mean, it's the one thing I say with wrestling. I mean, the great thing there is that you guys are taught very early on to enjoy the grind, and I think that's the one thing I take out of the wrestlers is that they're mind strong. They're very mind strong compared to like.
Good things don't come easy. You know what I
But
mean? If I
in a
want a good
case,
position against someone staunch, it doesn't come easy.
yeah, but so in a case like that, like how much win does that take out of you? If you know you've fought for this position. And then, as you say, 20 seconds later, the ref's like, "All right, let's give it back to the other guy."
Well,
Like,
I mean, you're implementing your game plan. You're doing the right thing. And again, talking about giving the nunchuck and katana back to Gaethje, like John Howard was a dangerous dude and had decent jiu-jitsu. It wasn't going to be a cakewalk on the ground if I got the takedown, but it was going to be better for me. So to have to back up and look at this guy, super athletic, hard leg kicks, you know what I mean? Like big, mean hands, like to have to enter that again, you know, like it's not exactly Lisa Simpson doing the windmill. You know what I mean? Like it's a serious situation. So it's just stressful to have to again like jump. It's not like you can really just walk in there. Like I've had a couple in the UFC where I was able to walk in on people because they were between punches or they thought I was going to punch and they were back in their shell. You know what I mean? But again, that's a gift that you know the luck that you create for yourself through hard work and a bit of cunning and gamesmanship. But to have to start that over again, like that is the most stressful part of a fight when you especially the first time coming out. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Once you get going, you're in a flow. But that flow can very much be interrupted by a referee making a decision like that. That has nothing to do with the action. There's no reason to separate two fighters in a 5-minute round, regardless of what they're doing, unless there's a foul. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It's not your job.
So you reckon let it go regardless? So like even if there is, I guess, like a minute of inaction, you're going, no, you let that go. Yeah?
I have never seen a soccer referee force someone to move forward with the ball. They can pass laterally and backwards all day long. The only thing in basketball that makes you do anything is a 24-second shot clock. You don't have to, no referee is saying, hey, Michael Jordan, shoot that ball now. Michael can go by the rules and go, I've got 12 seconds on the shot clock. I'll do what I want.
I was going to say, you do have the shot clock.
I've never seen offense forced. I've never seen an NFL team be forced to throw the ball versus run the ball, which is boring and slow.
I guess
Chicago Bears, when they won the title in '85, ran the ball for 3 yards of play for 100 yards. Now, that's 33 plays. Like, it's a bit slow. Where you get Tom Brady, 3 passes, 3 plays, 80 yards, touchdown. Everyone's happy. It's exciting and it's fun.
I guess though,
ways to go about it.
With this sport, like I mean, it's all about forcing the action, right? When you look at obviously as you've just mentioned with the ref, but also if you look at the pay structure, right? So the fact that you double your purse by winning, and then you've got the performance of the night. It's all about. You know, you want someone to go out there because I've said that.
But you can go out and fight your butt off like that and try to get a performance bonus and not get it, and get hurt and damaged and maybe lose a close decision, versus going out there and John Fitching someone, taking them down, beating them up, winning. You get your purse, you double your payday. Which is it? Do you want the extra 20 grand to win or 30 grand to win, or do you want to try to maybe be exciting and get 50 grand? But you might not win, and you
then,
take damage.
And then be exciting, get the 50 grand plus the extra 20 if you win, right? So like
maybe.
But it is a massive.
But some
gamble.
guys are making way less. You know, some guys are on 10 and 10. So getting that 50 sounds cool, but losing doesn't sound cool because you get cut, and then your payday on the other side of the 10 and 10 doesn't go to 15 and 15 or 12 and 12 or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's in the end, just do the best for you. Like. Go fight your best. Like Damian Maya says it. I want to get in there and not get hurt. I don't even really want to hurt the other guy. I want to have a clinical, like beautiful, artistic performance.
Now let me ask.
Sometimes they don't let people have that chance to do that because, again, I've been stood up from Mount. You know what I mean? I've seen some bad ones in the UFC and other organizations. Like it's not fun.
And so let me ask you this, because you mentioned it before, like the new kind of league around is the PFL, how do you find that format in regards to, like, they're all kind of fighting this tournament for the $1 million paycheck at the end rather than having your 10-10s and stuff like that? How, like, are you a fan of the way PFL are running their kind of system?
So I don't know what they pay guys. Like, say it's a 8-man tournament. There's 4 guys in round 1 that lose. I don't know if they walk away with 1,000, 2,000. I don't know. I do know, again, Lewis Taylor, my college roommate, college teammate at EIU, he won the $1 million tournament. And amazing. But whether it was for $1 million or not, I think the tournament structure suits a lot of real athletes. So in America, we run everything through the schools, and everything is a pyramid. So you have every school, every athlete has a chance to play. You get a regular season, which, turns into, like, if you're talented, it turns into like the practice bit. It's your warm up. Even if you lose a couple games or matches or whatever the sport is, right? It's all about getting to peak performance by the end of the year to do the tournaments. So right away, say you've got, 200 schools. Within the first tournament, you're going to be down to like 48. And then the next tournament comes, and then sometimes they only take the top 3 out of those. So now you're down to like 12. And 4 of them get a bye, and 8 of them have to fight for their life. And then you run, and you find the best team or the best individual. And it makes sense. So, like a Daniel Cormier, his entire life will be and I'm not perfect here, but he'll be like the 2008 NCAA champion at 184 pounds. He'll always be an NCAA Division I champion. Like, that doesn't, he can wrestle the next year and lose or get hurt and not even compete. He's still on his resume. He's still an NCAA Division I champion. Like, it's weird when you come and you can hold a belt like a Conor McGregor and never defend it, and you still get that accolade. Well, cool, you have the accolade, but like, you hold up the entire next year by not. So he was like a champion in like 2015, let's say, but then in 2016 there was no lightweight champion except Conor McGregor, who didn't fight. So
Well, he fought, but he went to boxing.
Yeah, but so it's just different. Like, when you hold up everything, so tournaments don't allow things to be held up. So you can call it the PFL Season 1 champion, or you can say it's the PFL 2018 champion. When you repeat, that's an amazing thing. If you can stay at the same weight and repeat, that's an amazing thing. If you can, beat new talent that comes in, that's an amazing thing. But like, it's every year you get a chance to be the best.
And
that makes sense to a lot of American athletes. It doesn't make sense.
How do you like
this matchmaking game?
How do you like their scoring system? Because like it's the same thing, right? Like, so if you get a win, I think it's 2 points. If you get a finish, it's 3. If it's in the first round, it's 6. How do you find that kind of a scoring system to kind of progress up the ladder?
Well, if you don't have a chance to directly face, say you and I are in this pool of athletes at the beginning, and we're not going to face each other because we can only have 2 or 3 fights before they choose their final 8. There's got to be something that can separate you and I. If we're both 3-0, or let's say we're both 2-1, like, what gets us into the tournament? Did you submit both of your guys and I won a couple close decisions? Well, you probably deserve the spot. Kind of like, like in wrestling, if you pin someone, you get X amount of points for your team. And if you get a decision, you get X amount of points for your team. And if you win in overtime, shows it's a close match, you get X amount of points for your team. So it's staggered to show the dominance of a team going through. So when you talk about like Iowa wrestling under Dan Gable winning like 19 NCAA championships in a row, it's because they brought their individuals to a tournament, and whatever results they got. But every time they won a match, they got a certain amount of points that came back to the team because of how they did it. If a guy pins everyone on his way through, like, that's a great thing for your team.
You're right.
And it shows like major dominance, let alone just beating someone by 2 or 3 points. So, if they're going to have such a big pool of guys to try to pull the tournament, like, playoff structure from, then there's got to be something that separates them, and that makes sense to me.
Now, going back to you, and talking about bonuses, did you ever get a bonus for taking out Hallman?
I did. So Dana was pretty upset at his outfit. And I remember being a little disappointed. I went from like soul crushed to like jubilant in the matter of 10 seconds. So I don't know who was closest to Dana. I think there was an athlete right next to the podium, and then there was Vitor Belfort, and then myself. And this is the UFC 133 press conference. And I came out of the fight pretty healthy, so sitting there happy and bouncy and ready to go. He announced the TKO winner, and I thought, man, that's my chance. Like, I hit him with some mean elbows, and it was a fun fight, and he had my back, and I got out of back control, so I changed the tide, and the crowd, and he gave it to Vitor, and I was kind of like, cool, and I'm sitting next to Vitor, and I definitely wasn't going to say anything, but I was like, man, screw this guy. He's got like a Playboy model for a wife, and he's already rich. And houses in Brazil are not that expensive. Like, he doesn't need the 50 grand, Dana. And then there was no submission. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. Like, just didn't enter my thoughts. So he started on this spiel about being upset and then just for getting those shorts off TV. And my eyes got big. And he gave me the bonus and like, cool. I can buy like a house or an investment property or pay off some college loans or do something, you know what I mean? Like, do something helpful. That was life-changing. Like, my pay inside the UFC, I could probably be bitter about. Like, I came in and fought as a replacement in a title contender fight. So I was fighting someone in the top 5. Chris Lytle, if he won, he was getting a title shot. So he was in the top 3 to 5 at the time. And Condit obviously was as well. And I had like 70 fights. So I was like, why can't I come in on like a decent pay packet? Like, why? I got the league minimum, like 6,000 and 6,000, my first contract. I was like, are you being serious? Like, I spent 6,000 in like a couple weeks just to train and organize everything and bring in like cornermen to the fight. I'm like, oh my, and that was in Australia. Like, I didn't even have to fly anyone international, but I'm just, oh my God, I'm already broke even. So I had some seminar money lying around, and I bet on myself, and I was a 3-1 underdog. So
Wow.
I was ended up going to be okay, but it was like, man, I just fought in the UFC. Like, I should have like a year's pay sitting in my bank account, not like a normal, like, working in the US, $30,000 a year kind of thing. I was thinking, man, I'm going to get 20 and 20 for sure. Oh no, here's your contract. Thanks, guys.
And it's
When
crazy
do we get to renegotiate?
people don't
when
realize
do we
that.
get to renegotiate?
Yeah, people don't realize
No,
that. And
like,
even like the
that's
Ultimate
no
Fighter,
money.
when they used to go 6-figure contract, right? And everyone's like, oh, you made it. And it's like,
That's $30,000 a year for 3 years is all it is.
right? But it's 6-figure. They don't mention the 3 years.
Yeah.
Like it's tough, man. It's tough.
Yeah. I can work in a gas station for 3 years and make 6 figures.
And I guess that's why my original question is like, what originally got you into it? Because now, I mean, I guess they're making a little more.
Yeah, it was just sport for me. It was just competitive. And
Yeah.
it was that question of like, can I use this ad hoc BJJ stuff plus my, immense, history in wrestling to be successful? And watching guys, like watching Coleman, Don Fry, who was a wrestler that liked to strike, Tito Ortiz, who wasn't a Division I guy. He was a JUCO, like junior college. And he had accolades, like he could have wrestled Division I. And did wrestle Division I guys. Like, I've seen a match with him and Chael Sonnen. Then watching Chael Sonnen and Randy Couture, but then you kind of put Randy on a pedestal being an Olympic, alternate. I had Matt Hughes on a pedestal. He became UFC champ. And he used to bash me. It was embarrassing. It was frustrating. But I was 17, 18, maybe 19 at the most by the time he and I separated ways on the mats. But it didn't seem like it was that far of a stretch to follow in their footsteps. And you saw like how they manhandled a lot of people. And I'm like, well, as long as I don't fight another wrestler, I'm going to be okay. And sure enough, if you look back at my career, like a lot of my losses are other wrestlers. It was just where I spent time on my back and lost the decision.
So when did the I have to bring it up only because a few people I told them that I was having you on this week and they straight away asked about it too. When did the whole manscaping stuff begin and what was the reasoning behind that? I mean, obviously the one that I remember was the arrow, right? And
yeah,
you know, at the time I'm like, are you trying to tell people where to hit? Because the arrow's like pointing up. But then you also, there was one time you did, it wasn't the tap out logo? Or
Tap out.
Yeah.
It
Was that more of
Yeah.
a sponsorship thing to pick up some extra dollars, or what was kind
Well,
of going
yeah,
on there?
they'd sponsored me, and I said, you know, like if I could shave a tap out logo on my chest, I would. And um, Skyscraper was there at at this show in Toronto, and he organized like a barber from New York and brought him in, and he brought in like a suitcase, and I laid down on my hotel bed on fight morning with a t-shirt next to me, just a big tap out t-shirt, and he just made little cuts, carved everything out, and then started getting into the details. And before you knew it, like I stood up and you could make out what it was. It was amazing. And
And
it was really fun. So they sponsored me for 2 fights, and then the threat of Reebok coming in kind of pushed everyone out the door. And for my last few fights, there was, you know, barely any sponsor money, unfortunately. But that was a really good time. Like that was fun.
and what was the reasoning behind your manscaping? Was it just a bit of fun? Like, because I know you
Yeah,
did
in
stars
fight day
as
you
well,
can't
or
do
was it to
anything.
put your opponent off, or like what was your like real reasoning behind it all?
Um, I mean, honestly, like fight day's boring. You can't run around. You can't. You feel like you don't want to waste a bunch of energy. You know, they say energy begets energy, but I'm not going to go out and like walk 7 or 8, 9, 10K through a city. You know what I mean? And just wear my legs out. You know, I'm not going to eat all day. I'm not going to play video games and just sit down and have my back and spine compressed all day. So just trying to keep with minimal effort a bit of activity through the day, and that was just one of the things that would take, you know, like a good hour and a half of my day, and just playful, and you know, keeps your mind off the fight for the most part. Um, when I wrestled in high school, I always used to pull like soccer socks up really high, like close to my knees. And the more confident I was, the higher the socks would be. If I was wrestling someone really good, I was actually like a bit more humble, and I only pulled the socks up a little bit. You know, like I don't know, I guess teenage logic there, right? So it was a bit of fun like back then, and I guess this probably was just part of the personality kind of making a return. But the first time I did it, I was fighting a guy that trained at Tiger Muay Thai. He was from South Africa. Had a few Muay Thai fights and a bit of BJJ, but I saw him in a grappling comp online, and I was like, no way! Like if he doesn't hit me, I'm gonna smash this guy. So I decided to do like a little goatee as a target and did the arrow pointing to it, and you know, had a bit of a laugh like at the stare downs and all that stuff. Like you're gonna have to hit me, you're gonna have to chin me to beat me, you know. And I think double leg takedown, head and arm choke, fights over, happy days. And then I had to sort of stick with it after that. So it just became a thing. And then the tap out's the only time I veered from it. When I went with the big tap out logo, I veered from the arrow and did that. And yeah, back to the arrow for the rest of them.
Nice, nice. Well, I guess it kind of suits you moving to Australia then too, right? Because I always say like that's the one thing about Aussies, we like that little bit of a larrikin. You know, we like to have a little bit of a laugh. And I remember, obviously, with my American friends, we always had that debate when Connor first came out. You know, a lot of them didn't like his kind of like
Yeah.
spiel, where us as Australians, we were kind of laughing at it. But that's just because we're like, he's, you know, talking a bit of shit, and it is what it is. And
Yeah.
we kind of
Yeah.
enjoyed
And
over
I'm
here.
Australian, so I've got both. I've got the whole like he's an asshole, but he's entertaining.
So
So
when
do you judge him? Do you judge him as a character, or do you judge him as a person? You know what I mean?
That's
So
it.
like,
No, and look, don't get me wrong.
yeah,
Like, I think over the years now, he has crossed some lines. So, you know, at the very beginning of his career, I was laughing and I was like, look, it's all playful. It's a bit of, you know, smack talk and this and that. But then, you know, as the years go on, there were a few instances where you're like, he's crossed a few lines. Like, you know, yeah, it is what it is. But I mean,
he pissed Khabib off.
right? He hit some old man at a pub.
Family, religion. Yeah, he pissed him off. He smacked the old guy in the pub.
Right. So
Yeah. Oh,
there's a few cases, but listen, you now obviously you're taking like a lot of your experience and you're I guess passing it forward in multiple ways. You've been announced as the national IMMAF coach for the Team Australia. Obviously, that's been pretty quiet at the moment.
Yeah, been a quiet year. I mean, we announced an entire staff. So Ben Ewan, former UFC fighter, now fights for Ryzen, and a student that I scholarshiped out at Tiger Muay Thai is an assistant coach, and Renato Subotic, who came from Italy. He's over here training with some really high level people. He does a lot of open mat stuff at his gym, UFC Rockdale, and lets pros and amateurs kind of come in and mix it up and do a bit of like higher paced sessions. It's not like, hey, we're going to teach an armbar today, like straight into like, somewhat live drills, still drills, and then a bit of sparring to finish. And he gets a lot of good people around him. And, he works with Martin Nguyen and a couple other, high level guys and girls. So his knowledge of IMMAF and obviously of MMA kind of coalesced into offering him an assistant coaching spot, but we've been just dormant because we can't do anything. We were every step of the way like, if this happens, we're going to announce this. If this happens, we're going to announce this, and then nothing. Everything got shut down and went the opposite way. So it was like, well, we'll just wait till next year.
Let me ask you though. How does the IMMAF work? Is it open to anyone? Like, is it a case of that you hold specific tryouts and people come in and try out? Or is it more as a head coach that you talk to specific gyms and see who they've got in their gyms and kind of take it in that way? Like, is it more an invitational based thing, or is...
Well, it's gonna be a bit of both now. So I'll give you the history of it. So I first came across IMMAF through my UFC cornerman, Ed Bavlock, who's in Melbourne. And he took a team, and I'm not sure if it was just the power of the internet, basically, which is how I found all my fights back in the U.S. Like, I never fought at home when I lived in the U.S. I never had to like sell tickets. I was always the away guy. But also, it was a time where MMA was a bit of a thing, so people would just show up just to watch fights. Where now the best guys in the world are on TV for free every other night, so people aren't walking down to the local to watch it. So the power of the internet somehow got Ed connected with IMMAF, and he brought a couple of his athletes and then coaches that he knew and liked. He kind of just said, hey, like, I've come across this thing. Would you guys want to go as well and do like a bit of a like represent Australia? So there were times at the IMMAF Worlds in the first 6-7 years where Ed brought his athletes where they'd get to the other country, but they'd never met the Australians that were also going. So it was kind of like awkward. Like, you sort of got to, introduce yourself and say, hey, we're all Team Australia. Whether or not the other team or the other people felt like that, it was like, well, we're just this gym from wherever, and we've just shown up to compete. But he did a really good job trying to make it like, hey, we're still Australian. We're here fighting against the world kind of thing. And over the years, it got a bit more like that, where it was a bit of a team, but it was still a very scattered effort. Because it was just a couple coaches that, again, had heard about it. So he was going to move to Ireland, but then COVID hit. So as part of his moving to Ireland, we did this big Oceania tournament where I was actually able to help put a couple guys on. So it was that invitational in a sense for the Oceania because I matchmake. So I have a pretty big list of coaches and athletes. And so he's one of the top amateurs. He's one of the top amateurs. He wants to compete, and he's pretty good. Like, let's get these guys a spot. We had a really good showing in March, early March, before everything shut down, and we were excited for the year because we ran some tryouts for those. Again, mostly invitational, but we did put it out to the public, and we planned on doing the same thing, like inviting people in to do tryouts, have workouts together, try to see most people in the same room. But we've got to be able to trust people from like Perth to report back with an accurate level of someone's skill when we can't get a guy from Perth and Melbourne in the same room to assess them. So it's going to be
Is there any point
a bit
though?
how you going like
Is
that
there any
for a
point
while.
though? Like, you've got the Australian team. Is there a point, like,
Yeah.
say in March you've got a tournament coming up? Is there a point that you go, okay, a month out we are going to fly everyone in and kind of house them, or no? It's not at that
Well, the
point yet.
hard part is the who's flying them in, who's housing them. Like, we're not Russia or Bahrain where we have like a prince just funding it through the government. So
Yeah.
until we can get some sponsorship, and I know Richie Cranny's really working on that angle, um, to try to maybe even run some of the smaller events and get some sponsorship money and some maybe ticket money and revenue coming through the door to then spend it back on the best guys to go do the best thing, the worlds and the Oceanas and things like that. So at the amateur level in wrestling, I mean, we have to fly ourselves everywhere. If we're going to go do off-season wrestling and try to go like on the Olympic pathways and things like that, like it's hard unless Home Depot or someone's sponsoring you. It's a really difficult thing, and you only get anything from the American government, and this is like recent, like in the last 15 years. They've started putting out like a $10,000 bounty on a silver medal and 20 on a gold or something like that. So it's tough. So a lot of amateur athletes get it that you're putting your time in, and parents know. From the time you're a kid to the time you're wherever you go, they know it could be potentially expensive.
Well, yeah. Over here as a kid,
there's some parents that are
over here as a
good.
kid, we had I guess our version of the Girl Scouts cookies, but like it was just boxes of chocolate. I remember as a kid, you'd have a basketball tournament coming up
All the time.
and I was like, you want to buy chocolate? You want to buy chocolate? And you literally go around just literally $2 at a time, $2-3 at a time.
Yep.
And that was kind of how
We'd sell frozen steaks and frozen pizzas for wrestling. That was a fundraiser for about 10 years in a row, and if not, it was Snickers and peanut butter cups and, all that. Yeah, it gets an eyebrow raise out of everyone, those Reese's peanut butter cups. Um, but yeah, it was the same thing, selling magazines, just whatever you could, selling discount cards to like 10 local businesses that would give you 25-30% off on your order. So you could sell that card for like $20. And hopefully they'd get $20 in savings through using it for the year. But there's parents that sort of look at sport and go, "Yep, I'm going to have my kid in sport. Da, 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 da. Ooh, this is getting expensive. I hope he doesn't get too good."
well, it is, and
like,
it's a massive commitment. It's a massive commitment because it's like years. It just goes on, and not even just the tournaments. Like for I remember, as I say, I had a basketball background, and it was, even buying the shoes, right? And then as a kid,
yep.
right, you want the Jordans, and like they're not cheap, and you and because you're playing every day. Like whether it be on the schoolyard, whether it be at practice, whether
you're beating those shoes up.
You're beating those shoes up real quick. So every few months, it's like, and another pair of shoes, and it adds up. It really does. And then, you had player registration, then you had court fees every week, and then you had this and that, and it just team uniforms. I mean, as I say, a lot of the times the teams would try to fundraise to some degree, but there is a massive cost associated with it.
Yeah, so it's with IMMAF. I mean, the athletes are gonna have to meet us halfway or better most of the time. Like we can organize the events so we can, get ourselves over to Worlds. My coach paid for his ticket to Worlds every year. His athletes paid their own way. There wasn't even like a big, I guess, organization. IMMAF. It was just IMMAF was a world organization, and these couple Aussie coaches went, "Yeah, we'll participate and be Australian and fly the flag," but there's no Aussie team. There's no office in Sydney CBD that's working on IMMAF Australia every day. And even now that we have a little bit of a team, it's still very much volunteer effort put in. Not much come out. No, we got to find ways to raise revenue. There's nothing just there for us, to offer. So yeah, it's exciting to start something from the ground up. And I'm sure it's going to be frustrating at times, but in the end, like to run these Oceanas and stuff like that, if you can't fly in from Melbourne or Sydney or wherever to go to Queensland or wherever it's going to be, spend a couple $100 to fight like potentially 3 times in a weekend and experience like international competition, but you'll fly over there to like go to schoolies or something similar. You know what I mean? Like, come on. So hopefully the draw of that experience is enough, because in the end, like for us as coaches, that's what it's about too. Like I'm super excited to get to see 50, 60 national flags flying in an opening ceremony, and then watch athletes show up at breakfast on day 2 with black eyes and then know that they have a fight that night, and just watch them grind through and do their thing. And see some of the trials and tribulations and even the controversy. Like it sucks, especially when you're on the wrong side of a bad call. But like it's all part of the experience, you know. It's it's right in there with like the smells and the sounds and oh, there was that drama of the Russian versus the guy from France and the guy didn't tap, but the ref and the mama. So yeah, it's an interesting thing, and some of the stories I hear are just the most random things that stick out in people's brains, and I think that's the beauty of it too. Like we're all there experiencing the same thing, but we all have different memories because we paid attention to different parts. So yeah, it's going to be cool, but this year has been frustrating.
Well, it has for everyone. But I guess, look, while we wait for IMMAF to potentially kick off again, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I mean, that's with anything right now. Like, my partner's in New York. I'm like, open the damn borders. That's me, right? Like, but while you're waiting for that to happen, so we've gone from pros, obviously amateurs, and now we go to the first timers. You've just recently, it's not your first Wimp to Warrior series, because I know you help with other series, but it's your first Wimp to Warrior series. What how has it started? I know you're only 2 days in.
Yep.
Are you already getting the excuses with the weather? Because I mean, we've had bad weather. Like,
No.
have you? And I only say that because we've had past series where like people have got text messages or coaches have got text messages saying, "I can't come in today. It's windy outside." So how
Yep.
how have the guys been receiving it? And what are you like? Just being your first official series, what are you expecting out of this series?
Um, so doing the one I've just done gives me a little bit of insight into like why people are doing it. And it's probably the biggest reason, like to keep in mind is like why these people have joined the series. In the end, the sport's the sport, but everyone gets something different from it. Kind of like what I said about that tournament series. Like if we all went to Bahrain for the IMF Worlds for 4 days, we'd all have way different stories because we'd have our eyes and ears caught by different happenings. So um, I think, and I know this will be true. Like I'm gonna learn people's stories before I know everyone's name. Like I'll probably know a little bit about their physicality and their mentality before I even nail the 30 names or 25 names in the room, matching faces with names. So um, it's going to be a unique journey. Like there's going to be some people that are in there because they're shy, and I'm introverted at times, but when I go extroverted, I'm goofy and playful, and you know what I mean. Like so we'll see like how that bounces off some people, and you got to kind of read the room. It's not as simple as just hey, go do that. Like how you say something to a certain person is going to really affect how they take it. So I'm going to have to be a bit of a chameleon at times as well, and my assistant coaches are going to have to do the same. Um, yes, it's unique. Like you talk to people on a group level, but then when you break everything down back to like individual pairs, even pairing people up, there might be times I have to like break up a pair of people because they're just not meshing and gelling, and they speak a different language, and one's really patient, one gets frustrated easy, blah 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 blah. So I haven't had but just one workout with them, and it was all solo. There was no partner drills on this first workout, and today I didn't actually lead because I'm not a qualified PT. I don't have like a cert 3 or 4. So we have another MMA fighter at our gym, Salani Mila. He's like 7-0, 8-0, and he's a qualified PT. So I've given him that morning with my assistant. So I'll get a report hopefully later today as to how everyone went and what the content was because I left that up to him. Um, but yeah, you're right. Like any chance to stay on the pillow at 4:25 in the morning, people are going to take. So we've got to have that like welcoming vibe. We've got to create that culture where people want to show up. They want to show up to have the fun. They want to show up because they know if they do, there's an energy that carries you throughout the day that's different than if you're sluggish coming off the pillow at 9 a.m. and just walking out the door with a coffee. Um, but also, hopefully, we can garner that like team atmosphere where you're showing up because if you don't, your
You
partner and your
you're letting
favorite
down the
partner or
team.
two are going to be without you. Imagine there's only two heavyweight guys, right? Imagine there's only two atom weight girls. If I don't show up, she's going to have to wrestle some smelly 50-year-old 90-kilo guy because everyone else has a partner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's one of the things where hopefully they start to bond together and they show up because of each other. And that becomes something just a bit more magical than just, hey, we're training.
So
Hey, we're
is
getting fit. Hey,
talk,
we're losing weight.
talking about names, and I'll only do this because this is a throwback to my series. Is Emma von Rijn doing helping you out with this one, or is she with the
Emma
CFS
von
fight?
Rijn is
Yeah.
my 5 day a week off-sider. She's a champion. Yeah, I've been
Okay.
training with Emma for like 3 years now, and really come to value just her presence on the mat. Like there's times where she'll teach a class or two, and then she doesn't stick around for a workout. And I know she probably worked out during the day, but I actually get a bit sad to see her go when I know we have a training session on that she's going to walk out on. Um, but yeah, I love having her. So even at the CFS series in Kira, she was my offsider for the 2 days a week I was there, and she did one day with John Levin himself. Sorry, I'm just walking through the house to get on a phone charger.
That's all
Don't want
good.
to lose battery
We
here.
get it. We get a tour. This is the new MTV Cribs.
That's it. MTV Cribs with the big cat scratching pole behind me, so we can sit 6 foot in the air and lord over the household. I'm surprised he hasn't made an appearance yet. Before we got live, he was crawling all over my shoulders and all over my desk upstairs. So,
Nice. So yeah, I mean,
but yeah, no,
obviously
Emma's awesome, man.
Yeah, Emma
I
was
know she did the
from
new
the blue
series. Yeah.
corner. She was from the blue corner. She was on my team, so I totally, know Emma. And the other name that I'll do a throwback. He's actually, I think, a competitor this series. I saw him post Tristan. He,
Tristan,
yeah,
yes,
he did
yes.
our series as well, but weeks out, he obviously got injured and he wasn't able to complete it. And I saw a post from him the other day saying, "I'm finally getting back on that horse, and I'm gonna obviously try to complete what and another one from the blue corner." So just make sure that
Yeah, yeah. So Emma
when
and him recognized each other, which was really cool, and that's where I started to gain a bit of his story. I'm like, how do you guys know each other? Oh, he was in my season, and da 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 da. And they had their little chat, and I got to learn a bit about how he enjoyed the season, but how he hasn't trained in quite a long time, and yeah, he's pretty excited. So
no, so the
hope
only
to
thing
keep
I
him up.
will the only thing I will ask is that when it comes to picking corners, he must remain in the blue one. So he started as
No
a blue
problem.
corner. He started as a blue corner. He's got to finish as a blue corner. But look, we'll start to wrap it up because obviously we are getting to that time anyway. I will though ask though, is this series it started, or like I know that with most series you have tryouts and stuff, but if anyone wants to join this series, is it too late? Do they have to wait for the next series
No,
or?
it's Yeah, no, it's definitely not too late. So we have more space in the room. I'd love to have 50. That's not going to happen anytime soon, and I might have to build a whole separate gym to house 50 people. But we had 25 our first day, and I'd be comfortable with like up to like 32, 33 in that room. So I've talked to Richie and Fadi at Wimp Warrior, and we've even went back through the list of people that couldn't make the tryouts for whatever reason. So our tryouts were on like Saturday morning, Sunday morning. We did a Wednesday night, but none of them were at 5 a.m. So there might be people that say, "Hey, I work weekends," or that doesn't suit me. I'm at church, or I'm with my family and I can't, make those times. But if it's training at 5 a.m. that we're signed up for, well, maybe the tryout should be on a Monday at 5 a.m. and see who wants to show up. So we had some people show up today. I think two, maybe even three, that would have come in today and treated today as their trial,
Okay.
just to get a feel of the gym, the coaching staff, the program, the teammates that are there, and obviously get a feel for getting off that pillow at 4:15, 4:25 in the morning. So yeah, it's still wide open. You guys can message me straight at Brian Ebersole through Instagram, through Twitter, through Facebook. I have two Brian Ebersole pages on Facebook, so you can't miss me there. Or even get a hold of Wimp to Warrior directly off their website. And yeah, we'd be happy to have anyone in the gym that still wanted to try to make a go of it.
So why the two Facebook pages? Is there like a split personality thing going on?
Well, I had one uh, that was my old page, and I converted it because I had over 5,000 friends when I was in Tiger Muay Thai, like I'd meet 400 people a month out there. So I was getting inundated with friend requests, and I finally hit my limit. And someone taught me how to turn it into like an athlete page, like a band or a business or this or that. So then it's like a like page instead of a friend page. So that's under Brian Ebersole. And then I made a page for my matchmaking work. So it was, not family, friends, pictures of food going up. It was all about sport and obviously a bit more Australia based, even though some of my American friends have found me and friended me and all that stuff. But that's where I'll share like techniques and dad jokes and
Nice.
the rest.
Nice.
So that one I had it as Ebersole XFC for a while, but then I started matchmaking another show in Melbourne called Demolition. So I actually just went and changed it. I didn't want to be like, because you can't really, I couldn't do like Ebersole XFC a certain way. Like it actually got weird with me, said that can't be your last name. You can't use that. So I had to like try to trick the algorithm in the program. So I didn't want to try to add Demolition to that as well. So I just finally put Brian Ebersole, and I put like nickname in parentheses, the matchmaker. And then I've changed my description a little bit. So yeah, I've got 2 that are Brian Ebersole now, and just
Cool.
like I said, makes it easy for me to find.
Cool.
Or people to find me, sorry.
Cool. Well, look, the last thing I'll ask you on just before we leave, I always like to get a few fighter picks, but the only one I'm after for today is only because it is the Halloween fight, which is this week, which is Anderson Silva's last fight versus Uriah Hall. I'd like to get your opinion on that. How do you think it's a good fight to go out on? How do you see that fight going down?
I think it's a good fight to go out on. I mean, Uriah Hall's proven to be a very durable and capable athlete, and he is dangerous. But I think he'll fight the style of fight that brings out the best in Anderson Silva. We're going to see maybe a bit of clinching, but I don't think we're going to see any single legs and double legs and high level throws. It's going to be a good stand up fight. And Anderson, people always talk about his offense, but his defense has always been very, very good, except that time he decided to mess around and Weidman caught him making faces and being weird. So, yeah, I think he can put on a defensive masterclass with someone like Uriah Hall. And, I think he's going to come away with a win. Whether he finishes him or not, I don't know. But I know with Uriah coming to attack and play, I think we'll get to see one of the better defensive performances from Anderson Silva again.
Nice. Well, there you have it. As I said, usually I say, what's the best way of reaching you? But we've just been through the whole Facebook page, comment and everything. So I'm just going to thank you straight off the bat. I really do appreciate the time. I know you're one of the busier guys at the moment. As I said, everyone's in lockdown. Everyone's got a bit of free time, but you've got multiple things going on. So I really do appreciate you tuning in. I hope to get you on again once the borders reopen, and maybe we can have some IMMAF news or something of the sort. But no, I really do appreciate it. As I said, you set me straight probably 10 years ago. I think or close to 10 years. It's probably eight years ago. I took lessons from that, and I took a lot from today. And yeah, as I said, I can't thank you enough. But until next time, that is it.
I'm a one.